There is a timeless formula for the execution of thought. There are, however, genuine reasons why the first step is the hardest to take, and the resistance this creates is what we call procrastination. In this video, I'm going to share with you the top 10 ingredients to melt away this resistance through the craftsmanship of thought. So let's get started. There is a general consensus that it is better to think than not to think. We can, however, become addicted to our own thoughts, and this leads to chronic thinking, which can become detrimental, and it shows up as procrastination in the following order. The first is the flight mode, where we are anxious and avoidant, and we deliberately focus on activities that is not urgent and more enjoyable until the last minute. And when the last minute arrives, we hit the fight mode, where we sprung into this adrenaline-fueled action. The dopamine pathway in this survival response is completely flawed. When we are in this fight or flight mode, we are primed for short-term rewards and an inability to think long-term. And the dopamine release without any prior effort is particularly dangerous. So we must reset this dopamine pathway to long-term rewards. And we do this by remaining in the parasympathetic state while we are focusing on long-term goals. And this stimulates the dopamine system to release dopamine in pursuit rather than a depletion of dopamine through short-term quick fixes. And we will explore how to remain consistent long-term a little bit later in the video. It is important to have an insatiable thirst for curiosity. This is part of learning, growing, and evolving. This can, however, lead to an infatuation with asking questions and endlessly researching new concepts and ideas. And this is the trap of overthinking and overanalyzing. And the inability to come to a natural resolution leads to much uncertainty and eventually procrastination. So the craftsmanship of thought is the ability to rapidly assimilate new ideas and integrate this by coming to a logical conclusion. And this allows us to safely exit the trap of the learning curve. And we do this before reaching a psychological asymptote. The ego will prevent us from admitting to our own faults in fear of being perceived as being inferior. Yet when we refuse to accept our own insecurities and pretend that they're not there, we create a false identity, and we cannot perfect what is false. Procrastination can happen when we over-invest in a false identity. In this case, we think things through over and over again to the point of overcomplicating the process. And this can lead to confusion and overwhelm, and the perfect excuse for not starting in the first place. Sometimes we must just accept that it can be very messy to figure things out until we do figure out what works seamlessly. An essential part of exiting the learning curve is taking time to reflect on and process past experiences, because inaction does not always mean procrastination. It does take time and space to assess the situation with higher order thinking. When we're in fight or flight, it is easy to move from one thing to the next too quickly, and this is behavior of an anxious brain, where we are in complete denial of the comfort of our own presence. When we dedicate time to recharge in a thought-free space, it gives the brain an opportunity to take a break from thought, because similar to the heart, which cannot sustain beating at 180 beats per minute, the brain does require downtime in addition to sleep. And the nature of your thought is actually dependent on the rhythm of your heart. And the natural rhythm of your heart determines the quality of your thoughts to hit the right note. And without solitude, we may never discover what this natural rhythm is and remain out of sync with this moment. The momentum of rapid realization begins with one simple realization that we are not our thoughts, but the awareness that precedes it. And without this realization, many spend an entire lifetime hallucinating reality under the spell of thought. And Eastern traditions refer to this as Maya, illusion, or simply the ego. And when we are released from this spell, we can then simply witness thoughts as they appear within the echo chamber of our brain. And this dilutes the vicious momentum of thought and leads to the great act of surrender. When we surrender, we are truly free because our thoughts have no power over us. And this is when reality begins to untangle from the toxic seductions of the mind, and we begin to observe things exactly as they are without the burden of thought. For as long as we held hostage by our own thoughts, the possibilities that exist in the elusive unknown will remain out of our own reach. To remain in this senseless, thought-free existence is the greatest act of procrastination, and many who wander into the etiology of Eastern traditions end up in this existential trap. So the idea is to acquire this thought-free state, to untangle yourself from the disposition of parental wounds, intergenerational trauma, coping mechanisms, and so that your identity is not threatened by the political or social agenda of the day. And then to reconstruct a strong self-identity by asking the question, what would a free man or a free woman do? The craftsmanship of thought requires a strong self-identity, and this is not crafted from the mind, but from the heart. And as we've discovered previously, the greater the identification with our own thoughts, the greater the fragility of our own ego. And a conflict of interest arises between the head and the heart when we do not trust our own heart and therefore do not trust ourselves. And this means with that we are incapable of leading, because the mind is a useful servant but a dangerous master, and it has a habit of serving whatever it places its attention on. So when the mind is without a master, it becomes self-serving. And the easiest thing to do here is to place your attention on your heart, because when we act from the heart, the mind surrenders in service of love. The heart does not think, but creates the milieu within which we are calm, clear, and confident. And this fosters strong self-discipline because we are willing to do whatever it takes despite the odds. We are clear with what we want, what we don't want, our likes, our dislikes, our goals, and our ambitions. When the nervous system is relaxed, there's more oxytocin in the system, and this leads to connection, a trust in the unknown, and an openness to possibility. So when we are calm and relaxed, we have all the time in the world to think things long term and see things through, because we have very clear boundaries on what distracts us from mission. So the key to remaining consistent long term does not come from doing more, but from doing less. Doing less gives more time to do what matters, and it is an essential part of staying focused to not just have but maintain a variety of interests, because when we have a single focus, it can drive the brain towards exhaustion. So it is important to break up the day with a variety of challenges that allows the brain to switch contexts, remain highly adaptable and creative, so that when we do return to our main goal, we have a fresh perspective and a renewed conviction. And these long-term goals are non-negotiable, and it includes things like fitness, nutrition, family, intimacy, and fun. So the great beauty in life is making what may seem inconsequential magical. Sometimes we procrastinate because we are stuck in a single point of view. However, open-mindedness is not about being easily swayed by new ideas or taking on board multiple points of view because you sit on the fence and you're afraid to have your own point of view. But rather, open-mindedness is about the mind operating across multiple channels of thinking, which includes logical, empathetic, goal-oriented, abstract, and critical thinking. And this allows us to synthesize new ideas and original ideas, because what often drives action is innovation and the excitement of breaking into new territory. By far, one of the most underutilized assets is a community that is action-oriented. And this can be your place at work, a business owner's mastermind, a group of friends that you go on action and adventure with, or simply a supportive spouse or family member. And it is important to establish a healthy relationship which is action-oriented, and this comes very effortlessly when you are in the service of love. After all, it is through each other that we learn to love ourselves, and love is an inexhaustible driving force. So if you want to be part of my community, you can hit like and subscribe and jump onto this playlist linked here, where we go deeper into the aspects discussed in this video.